try to give you the high level. Oh, thank you for recording. So in this first one in 1888, this is just showing that the land, which had different names back then, was actually occupied by the Ottoman Empire, or essentially Russia. And then in 1918 and 1946, it was occupied by the British Empire. And just my sense from what I've read, it seems like overall, this has been a little bit more of, the Palestinians were able to live somewhat in peace in this time. They were able to have their own land. They were able to, have families that lived there. Then the UN plan came out in 1947, which divided the land we see now as Palestine and Israel as such here. So basically, everything was still blue in British Empire, but there were certain things that were Palestine. This was the Jewish area in the lighter blue, and then the ones with the purple are the Palestine Arab areas. And then Jerusalem had oversight by the UN. Then in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, neither sides were really happy about this, but I think there was a big uprising by the Arabs. But then eventually, essentially, the Israelis had won, and then they took over a big portion of this. You can see that this portion here is actually Jordan took over this portion, and then Egypt took over what was Gaza. So you can see that West Bank is basically Jordan, and the Gaza is mostly Egypt. And then when we talk about the Six-Day War and what Palestinians refer to as the Nakba, or the catastrophe, this was that very deadly war where basically they had these basically what they call the green line, these lines of the land. But there was still restrictions, and you can see this still says, it has the Israeli flag here. So this started the start of when things started to get really, really bad. They were pretty bad after 1947, but they got even worse after 1967. And then you can see here the settlements within Palestine, the Palestinian areas, and then how they are getting encroached even more by the Israeli settlements. So that's enough history for now, because that's as far as we can go. And maybe if we have some other people like Sam join, then they can kind of add a little bit more detail as well.
I believe the Nakba is what happened in 1948, not 67.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. So now we've transitioned to the 3 ways we can help. So boycott, divestment, and sanction. So the BDS Palestinian movement was inspired by a very successful South African anti-apartheid movement, which I'm sure everyone here knows about. Its purpose is to exert pressure on Israel to comply with international law. The movement started in the early 2000s. And this is when the largest call to action for BDS was around 2005, but it did have its origins earlier in the 2000s. And the 3 really main demands are for Israel to end its occupation and colonization of all Arab lands occupied in 1967 and dismantling the wall, recognizing the fundamental rights of the Arab Palestinian citizens of Israel to full equality, and respecting, protecting, and promoting the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes and properties as stipulated in the UN Resolution 194. And so this is really speaking about those, the UN had separated that land into two parts. There's Arab land and there's Jewish land, and really to make sure that those are seen and respected and allowed for both, both racial groups to live peacefully in those two areas. So it's not to say that everything belongs to Palestine. That's not what it's about. It's about respecting the lines set aside by the UN and allowing all Arabs that were displaced in that big Nakba war to come back. And what I had read was that there was 2.5 million Palestinians that are now registered as refugees. And they may want to come back. They want to know that they can come back to their ancestral land and be a citizen. Right now, Palestinians cannot be citizens in Israel. So more about what that means. So for the boycott, it's about withdrawing support from Israel's apartheid regime, any complicit sporting, cultural, and academic institutions, and international companies engaged in violations of Palestinian human rights. Divestment is about urging banks, local city councils, churches, pension funds, and universities to withdraw investments from the State of Israel and all Israeli and international companies that support Israeli apartheid. And for sanctioning, it's about pressuring our governments to end Israeli apartheid by banning businesses with illegal Israeli settlements, ending military trade and free trade agreements, as well as suspending Israel's membership in international forums such as the UN bodies. So switching gears to the boycott targets, get my notes here. So this is an overview, which is an updated overview as of February 2025. This came from the bdsmovement.net and this guide to BDS boycott. I personally like this website because it has detailed descriptions and it also updates these boycott targets on a pretty frequent basis. And they say also, what dates these were posted and new information. I can give you an example. Reebok is new in 2025, and they're here because of their support of it is the Israel Football Association, which includes leagues in the illegal settlements. In previous years, this was Adidas on this list for a year, and then after boycott pressure, they no longer they did not continue their sponsorship of the Israel Football Association next year. Also, Puma was on this list before, and after boycott pressure, they removed their sponsorship after after their contract was up. So it really does work. And I wanted to show just a couple to talk about here, but each of these has their own story, and it's useful to kind of look at what they are. If you go to this, you can click on the link for that particular company and it'll share the background on it. So the ones I wanted to share were Chevron, Caltex, and Texaco. And I think many people here, you guys are very involved in the actions going on in your area. So you've probably seen this about Chevron, but it's the main corporation extracting gas claimed by Israel in the East Mediterranean. It's off the shores of Gaza, but outside of their the Gaza territory. Chevron generates billions in revenues, strengthening Israel's war chest and apartheid system, exacerbating the climate crisis and Gaza siege, and is complicit in depriving the Palestinian people of their right to sovereignty. So this goes for all three companies because Caltex and Texaco are also associated with Chevron. Microsoft is another big one, and it also includes Xbox because they are owned by Microsoft. So all of those video game consoles we need to get from another company besides Xbox. But Microsoft is a hard one, and it's perhaps the most complicit tech company. It's so ubiquitous. A lot of us have PCs that may not be from Microsoft, but we use, OneDrive, which is a Microsoft product. And so it's really hard to get away from Microsoft. Their involvement, however, has been very well documented, exposing its strong ties to Israeli military, its collaboration with Israeli government ministries, and its involvement in the Israeli prison system, which is notorious for systematic torture and abuse of Palestinians. Microsoft knowingly provides Israel with technology, including Azure Cloud and AI services that are deployed to facilitate grave human rights violations, war crimes, crimes against humanity. So this is a really powerful one. And, we may or may not have as big of an impact, but if you are associated on the board of a company or the board of a school or, a bigger organization, this is where we can have a really big impact to think about, hey, what are the other opportunities we can use versus, paying contracts to Microsoft for SharePoint and OneDrive services, so things to think about. Switching gears on divestment. So a helpful website I found on this, which is also been linked on the BDS movement website, is American Friends Service Committee, AFSC. And so they're really inviting organizations to withdraw their support of Israel human rights violations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity in the ways that they, do their investments. And so the first step in doing that is to adopt an investment policy statement with a commitment to divest from companies that consistently, knowingly, and directly enable or facilitate genocide, apartheid, or other war crimes. Commit to a process with a reasonable timeline for implementing the new policy. This might be, it's not going to be an easy thing to do. And so just set yourself reasonable timelines in doing that. And then report on the implementation periodically to a committee that has community representation. And more on that is, in order to implement an ethical investment policy, organizations should sell direct investments in stocks or bonds of companies on the AFSC's divestment shortlist. And here's the link to that, to access that. And I'm going to give some examples in the next slide. There's also a city council toolkit. So I know a lot of us have, a lot of people on this call were either in city council or also people that are in city council. This is something to, that can be shared. But this includes helpful tools for city councils from the U.S. Campaign for Palestine Rights, USCPR. Second part of that is to engage with investment managers and to create a process where you periodically review investments. Some more on that, examples from that short list. So when weapons manufacturers, these might be part of, your mutual funds that make their way into there, like Boeing, General Dynamics, General Electric, Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, and Rolls-Royce. And then other US companies include Caterpillar, Chevron, Palantir, and Valero. Caterpillar is one where they're actually currently used pretty heavily in Palestine for demolishing houses. And so one of the issues in Palestine is that a lot of people that live there, they can't get permits to build. And then when they do build something, there's those houses get demolished. So that's why you see a whole bunch of rubble. So even when people try to make their families a home, they get demolished. And sometimes there are people inside those homes, and they are killed in the process of the house demolitions as well. It's all very sad things going on in the world. So after that BDS, we have sanctions as the last part of the BDS. And this is really about putting pressure on our political representatives. One thing that I have a link here to is the US CPR. They have a form letter to stop arming Israel with my tax dollars. So this is one of those examples that you can do. Another one is that ASSC actually has an action hour that you can register for. It's every Friday at 9 a.m. And you can learn about the latest news and how to contact Congress and ways to do that. So it's free, and I've signed up for myself. So I think it's really, both are easy things that you can do. Fourth way of helping out is to participate in a march in your area. And I understand that we will hopefully have somebody to talk about that a little bit more after this presentation. One of the ones coming up in the Bay Area is Right of Return Pilgrimage. It's on this Sunday, and it's actually walking from Alameda to Berkeley. It's a 22-mile walk and march to basically bring attention to this cause. Another idea is to start a book club or share a book at your book club about a Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and have those discussions. Our family actually had a really great discussion for how to be an anti-racist when the BLM movement was going around. And not everyone thought the same way. And we had really great dialogue in those discussions. It's hard, but I think it was really meaningful for us to have those discussions. Also, if you're big on social media, sharing stories, art, and music from Palestinian voices is a great way to put something that's not, something that's harsh, and just making people see something beautiful and get people thinking about the human aspect of the Palestinian people. Last thing is to support. So donating your time or resources to organizations that are fighting for justice and peace, and organizations providing aid to those in need. So with that, I'd love to hear your thoughts, anything where you guys have actually done things that you feel have been really meaningful for you in this area. Also, any questions I hope I can answer. One thing about the community sharing is, because this is a sensitive topic, just listening without judgment and without debate. Take responsibility for how your words are received. Be kind, be curious, and don't expect resolution or agreement if we may not agree on everything, but I think these are some good things to be aware of.
And if you've got a question to ask, go ahead and do a raise hand so that we can get everybody in order.
Excuse me, and Melanie, why don't you go off share so that we can see each other's faces?
Oh,
yes.
And I was going to ask Mike Caggiano, you've got a fabulous question here that is absolutely mine. Is anti-Zionism and criticism of Israeli policies really acts of anti-Semitism? Mike, is there more you want to add to that? But that is absolutely you said what I really need to hear.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just try and make it brief because I put that letter in the chat. It has not been published yet that I know of. It may not be, who knows? But I kept it at 150 words because the Merck is very strict on the 150 word limit. I mean, it'll blink red, if you try to, it's 151. No. So there it has 150 words, and not being Jewish, being an atheist and whatever. I figured better to allow, for even better yet, rabbis make my case. So I listed the YouTube links for three different rabbis. I don't think they were from the same sect, but there's one called Naturoi Karta, which is based in New York, upper New York State. But there are actual residents of Israel, ultra Orthodox, who feel this whole thing is evil, And so I'd rather rather than me try to put words in their mouth, I thought they did a wonderful job. So simply go to the youtube.com/ and then the three gentlemen uh, who had something to say on the issue and give them a listen. That's all. And then there was a guy from APAC who changed his mind, and I put his link on there as well. So if you want to copy the link, it's very easy to hit just copy the link, and you get all the links, people to chat in everything in the chat, and you've got it. If not, I guess you could just ask me to forward it to you. I could do that, but essentially, they're saying no. It has absolutely nothing to do with Zionism, anti-Semitism, and I just don't know how long you want me to talk about that. I'm happy to, but they feel that was a secularized and kind of a banded version of what Judaism is supposed to be. Ultimately, there may be a Jewish state. Ultimately, they're all going to, I'm an atheist, so I mean, you're not going to expect me to take it all that seriously. At the end of times, everybody dies, and wherever you go, who knows? I'm just going to go to the worms, but that's as far as I. But saying that you have mandate to essentially violate Jewish law by murdering people, taking their homes, kicking them out, and saying, hey, listen, the Bible tells me that I'm supposed to be living here. You're living here for 300 years. I'm sorry. I knew people in my religion that were here 2,000 years ago. So I should be back here, and that's essentially the logic of it. And I'm sure other people will be happy to expand on or change my opinion. But that's essentially it. They've basically stolen that, and they were mentioning that the original Zionists, late 1800s, 1890s, Theodor Herzl and some other people, were basically socialists and atheists. They weren't really practicing Jewish people, but they didn't really think of using the idea of the Bible and Book of Joshua for 2,000 years ago to say, oh, that's the real estate guide, folks. There it is right here. We used to own this. We're taking it back. So there's an awful lot of push and shove. And again, my favorite guy to go to is his Israeli historian named Ilan Pappé. He kind of has Elon Musk's name, but I think it's spelled differently. It's Ilan Pappé, Pappe. And he's a recognized, very highly respected. He lives in England because he'd be harassed out of Israel, but he's Israeli. Very heavy accent, hard to follow him. And if you Google him, and again, I have a good link if you care for it, I could send that. But just listen to the man. That's all. I mean, they speak much better than I can. They know the religion, they know the history, and I'll leave it at that. I mean, I'd be a poor substitute for these people. So, thank you.
And Melanie, do you want to add anything on? I do see your comment about Omar.
Yes, I was going to say that has been he has gets that question a lot. Omar Barghouti, I don't know how you say his name, is the co-founder of the BDS movement, and he gets that question a lot, and he's saying Judaism obviously is not about killing people. It's not about doing these things. It's about peace. It's about love. These are the same tenets of Christianity as being Muslim. We all agree on this. So these are really greed and power that are, kind of taking over here. Is not related to any Judaism, and what an insult to Judaism that would be, right? If we think that this is in any way connected to Judaism.
Well, so is this kind of, shall I just put it as, this is very similar to what the president is pushing today, that if you are protesting for the Palestinian people, you're at a university campus and you're protesting for Palestine, that you must therefore be anti-Semitic? Is that, that we've got this.
It was said so well earlier. I don't know if it was Harvey or somebody that it's kind of like the soundbite, right? That we hear to basically shut down all other discussion about it, right? It's a soundbite. It's from the playbook, and it shuts people down. It just causes derision, and it just shuts people down. The problem is that there's so much power and so much money in that Zionist movement. There's so many people that are pro-Zion, thinking that are in politics and giving money to these things. So it's really difficult to combat that. But yeah, it isn't. I think all we can say is there's just too much knowledge out there. We have YouTube. We have all of these ways of seeing news now online. There's just too much information out there. Documentaries on YouTube that are great to see. It's just you can't ignore it. And the hundreds of resolutions from the UN that are trying to go against what Israel is doing. So there's just too much news about it to ignore it.
Okay.
It's like saying that if you're anti-Trump, then you're anti-American.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right, Elsa, you're up.
How do you raise your hand? I never can do it. Which is the icon?
It should
I think
be under
you did it.
What?
Oh, he got it. He did it. No, I don't see his hand up. Go to React, the little heart at the
React.
bottom.
Click on React.
React.
Right.
There's a little heart.
The heart?
Yeah,
Yeah.
push on
I
that.
see Elsa Schaefer.
Okay.
Elsa Schaefer has her hand up.
Okay, Elsa,
There you go.
you're next.
You're up.
I don't want to make it long, but I'm just curious whether Greg would like to go first and how long you've been trying to talk. Would you like to go first, Greg? Or
Well, I want to mention something which I didn't hear. I believe that there are all kinds of terrible things that are happening, but the worst one is Netanyahu, and he is afraid of going to jail. And in order to stay out of jail, he continues this war because that's the only way that he can justify staying in power without being judged. And the whole problem, of course, was started by Hamas in over a year and a half ago, and it was understandable that Israel would react, but killing 53,000 or 56,000 people was not the plan. Was not supposed to happen, and Netanyahu is completely to blame about that. And whatever we do, I don't know how we're going to discourage him from continuing to stick to this technique. War is the only way to stay in power, and I don't know. I don't think that BDS will get rid of him
yet.
Okay, Elsa, you're up.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I'll click now. I just put the name of a book in the chat, which I found fabulous. It's not one or the other, but it's a paragon, which is a mathematical shape, geometric shape of infinitely many sides, which I think is such a great title for this. It's a mesmerizing book about two men. They have families, they go through similar tragedies, and eventually meet, become brothers, and now have formed a group of people from both sides, and they go around the world and give presentations. So it's a true story, absolutely mesmerizingly written, and I can't recommend it highly enough. It's also very well written. But my question, Melanie, is from that fabulous list of of things we can do. Where do you see the most hope? This is mean because I'm saying, is there a rank order in a way? But where do you see the most hope? Where do you see the most influential group or groups that we can help have more voice to break through, frankly, APAC with Congress, paying, we have to get money out of publicly funded money. I mean, we need publicly funded elections, no special interest money. But how do we help overcome that? Oh, and by the way, there's a bill on that going through Congress, SB 42. And you can all right now call your state senators, i.e. Josh Becker, who are it's about to have a floor vote because it's gone through the first two committees. So anytime you can write Josh saying, can't wait for that to go through would be terrific. California only. But so back to Melanie, do you see the best way to support groups or a group that is really making headway with this?
I really don't know myself. I'm interested to see if anybody else has ideas about this. What I've just learned is that in the South African apartheid, what I heard was that the boycott was really what drove the change there. But that being said, I think we have an even more difficult situation because the U.S. is so in bed with Israel. And if you have the South African members that have gone from South Africa to Israel and actually seen, boots on the floor, how it is, they say it's worse than it ever was in South Africa. So it's so hard to say. And I don't have enough experience in this to answer that. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts.
Well, you know that a few years ago, around 1993 or so, 92, 93, 94, there was an agreement which came out of Oslo, which got Yasser Arafat, Rabin, and Perez to agree to peace and to agree to an equal rights for Palestinians as well as Israelis. Yeah. And then there was this terrible thing where Rabin was killed and Perez was kind of spineless. And eventually Netanyahu convinced some of the people in Israel that he was the guy that was, by the way, I have friends in Israel who tell me that he thinks he's the Winston Churchill of the Middle East and that he's going to save Israel from all miseries. Well, he's doing just the opposite. And I don't know if there's a group right now that would support some major move against Netanyahu, but that's the thing we have to do. We have to get rid of that guy. And by the way, I don't know if you heard, but yesterday, the former prime minister of Israel, called Olmert, made a big declaration. He said that he didn't want to go as far as genocide. And as a matter of fact, I don't think we need to do that. But Israel is committing war crimes. They're starving people, and that has to be stopped. And I don't know how a group like ours can do that. I welcome any suggestion of any strong organization that, J Street was pretty good. Shalom Ashab was pretty good, but they didn't make it. And the population of Israel is split. There are people who believe that the only way to end this misery is to kill as many Hamas people as possible. There's another group that wants the hostages back, and they're demonstrating every weekend for the hostages to be brought back. But Netanyahu is not listening because he says he knows that if the hostages are brought back and people agree to stop the war, he's in jail. So that is the cornerstone of the whole thing at this point. And not to say that boycott, divest, and so on, it wouldn't do any good, but it's going to be a very slow thing. Not it wouldn't satisfy anybody on this in this group today, because
I was just going to say that. I'm sorry for interrupting.
I'm finished.
Okay, I just wanted to add to that. I think as Americans, we want things done fast, right? We want something to be done fast. And when you hear about all of these struggles, especially between different, deep-rooted fear and hate, it takes time, right? It's going to take generations probably to get this fully good. But all we can do is just keep chiseling at it and showing and trying to make change.
Yeah,
I think Phoebe was the next one.
You talked about apartheid in South Africa. It took years and years for the divestment to work. All right, yes. Phoebe, you're next.
Hey, everybody. I'm glad I got to join tonight. Thanks for having this session. I just wanted to share just a little bit of a personal experience I had last year. I guess I'm still having it now, but I was approached by people. I ran for Foster City Council and won. But when I was running, I was told by people who believe that they speak for everyone Jewish in Foster City, which is not the case. But they told me that I am anti-Semitic, I am anti-Jewish, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. This is because in a public forum at a city council meeting, I gave public comment and asked for peace and prayed for peace. I read a poem by a Jewish rabbi about peace, and I was attacked for doing that. People I've known for years here in the community that know me to be a good and trustworthy person told me that I'm basically a POS and I'm dead. But I know that this is political, so I tried not to take things personally. And I know that just because there's bullies that are loud and they're bullying people, that doesn't mean that they're correct. Additionally, and this coincides with Sam's not on the call yet, but I was also told that if I don't disavow Sam publicly and sever ties to him and basically blast him in public, that I will never be able to rebuild bridges with the Jewish community in Foster City. And again, I let actually people keep, which is one person speaking for everybody, I let this person continue talking, which was frustrating to my husband who was there, because this was at a farmer's market, and to my friend who was tabling with me during the campaign, who happens to be Jewish. She was fuming. And she's like, why did you talk to him for like 45 minutes? And I was like, because I wanted to understand and learn. Not that I was ever going to agree with him, but I didn't want to show him what he thought I was going to be about. He probably thought that I was going to go into it being nasty, rude. And I'm like, I'm not that person they're describing. I won't be disavowing anybody, including Sam, anytime in my life. So I was like, yeah, thanks for your feedback. I hear you. And I actually reached out to this person after the election was over, and he was confused why I reached out, but he still showed up. And I said, I just reached out because you're in my community and I'm your constituent and I'm your council member and we should talk. So we actually talked about a lot of different things and realized we have a lot in common. I wouldn't say that anything got resolved because of that, but I think because I'm not Palestinian, I have privileges where I can help to build the bridges a little bit, at least repair like bit by bit, like chipping away, as Melanie said. So that was just something I wanted to share, that there is a little bit of light if we can work together to try to seek it. I mean, believe me, I was really upset and I was really angry at this person and other people. But then I realized they're just using this instead of actually, because reaching out is actually the hardest thing to do. Because I said, if you have opinions, you want to express to Sam, I'm not sure why you're going through me. I'm not his babysitter. He's a grown man and so are you. So perhaps two grown men should talk to one another. So yeah, that was just something I wanted to share.
Who is speaking
I don't
right
know
now?
if it helps, but something.
Melanie.
Oh, my name
Thank
is
you,
Phoebe.
Oh, I'm
Phoebe.
sorry, Phoebe, upper left corner.
Phoebe, who's a member of the Foster City City Council. And thank you. That was a really meaningful story because, so often we hear these stories secondhand. And it was really, and knowing how well you handled that, I just wish by grace that I will be as diplomatic, because that's not always my forte. All right,
Same.
Gail, you're up next.
Yeah, sorry I got home late in this part of the meeting, but I don't know if you discussed anything about what percentage of people in Israel and what percentage of Jewish people in the United States support the most extreme, support everything that the government is doing in Gaza. My experience was trying to discuss something on the phone with a Jewish woman who I think was misrepresenting how much support, for instance, Jewish Voices for Peace have. She tried to say that there's hardly anybody who supports them, and there's hardly only one or two rabbis or a small number of rabbis who are critical. And I think that that's a problem if they actually believe that they're in the majority and are treated as they're in the majority. That's one question. And the other question or kind of an observation is it true that this puts Democratic legislators in a bind because they don't want to lose the Jewish vote? I had a feeling that this was the not stated reason for all those arms shipments and the reason why they're still going on, and nobody wants to stand up and say stop it. So, two questions.
Thank you, Gail. I don't know the answer to what percentage of people support. I think you're saying the Zionist movement, right? And in Israel and in America?
Well, support the actions of the Israeli government now.
Okay.
I'd say.
Yeah, I didn't touch on that. I don't know if anyone happens to know that on the call.
Because the woman I spoke to had so much fear and so much hatred and so much emotion behind everything she said. It was clear that she at least was not capable of even, acknowledging reality of any kind. So I don't know how common that is, and I also was some time ago I met an Israeli woman here in the States who said that the Jewish people she knew in America seemed more extreme or more supportive of the government than the Jews in Israel. I don't know if that's true or not.
The APAC has lost a lot of ground in the last few years.
So whose hands up next?
I didn't know that.
Go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah. So this it's obviously, like everything else that's controversial, it's very complicated. And I agree with everything that Mike has said. I agree with what Greg has said. I agree with what Harvey has said. The complicating issues are severalfold. Of course, Netanyahu can only hold on to power as long as he keeps the war on, because he's got the support of ultra-religious zealots in Israel that help keep him in power. And the reason they're into it is because they believe in part of the Bible that says this land is yours, period. It's not up for discussion. And even though there's nuances that various people will say, well, it doesn't mean this, that, or the other, they believe that. And it's hard to get past that. And then you have the huge number of people that are very paranoid about everything that anybody says about Jews, regardless, is attacking them. And they're very paranoid. And then you have the US electeds, the people in Congress, the senators and so on, that are afraid to say anything because they'll be accused of anti-Semitism, and they know where their votes are coming from in a lot of these areas. And so we can't simplify it in any way, in my mind, other than to say it's apartheid, it's genocide, it's killing people. That's what it is, plain and simple. And no matter how you dress it up, that is what it is. And when you put together the paranoids, the Netanyahu, and the religious zealots, and the fear of American politicians, it's going to take an uprising of people, mostly American Jews, say, look, I'm Jewish, and this is genocide, and everything that they're doing, new settlements and so on and so forth, is just furthering apartheid. And you can't hedge your bets on it. And I'm sorry I feel so strongly about it, but that's where I stand on it.
Thanks, Marshall. Diana, you ready?
Yes, thank you. I was just checking on Ashley. I just realized that Ashley's not on the call, and she's supposed to be joining me in my report later. Thank you so much, Phoebe, for your report. It reminded me that a anti Israeli resolution was presented to the Redwood City Council, and I went to talk about it. And Ashley, speaking of Ashley, we authored a peace resolution a year ago, and our focus was absolutely on peace. And it was a finely crafted resolution that where we wanted to avoid any controversy in order to get and it went to the state party, and they accepted it. It was one of the resolutions that year that got accepted, and it was because we did such a great job of trying to avoid the bumps. But in any case, the resolution that was being presented to the city council was full of bumps, and I had that map. I had my version, the version that was given to me by a Palestinian friend. It's a smaller version of that map that Melanie showed in her slides. But I reported that map influenced how I think about this issue. And the Jewish members of that audience were furious, absolutely furious. And they thought they knew who I was, and you just turned out to be this horrible person, and oh my gosh, and they demanded to meet with me. And so I went and had coffee with several of them. And one of the things, and they came in with all smiles and everything because they wanted to be best friends now, right? And I told them that, so they started to report that their children don't feel safe, they don't feel safe, that there's anti-Semitism is just rampant, and we get slammed all the time, and how dare you support this horrible thing that Hamas, how awful that you support Hamas and what they did. Okay, I did not at any time ever say that I supported Hamas and what they did. However, as a Methodist, it would be very helpful if my Jewish community would at least express concern, about what is happening with the Palestinian people and the loss of life that has happened. At the time we had our meeting, it was only 40,000 people, mostly children, who had died. And, that was a turning point in our conversation, because they said, that's true. Who's the bigger victim here? Us because of anti-Semitism, or the Palestinians because of the loss of life? So we walked away friends, actually. I didn't think it was possible, but it was because I asked them to understand what an observer, what most of us see, right? When excuse the expression, if a Jewish person is whining about anti-Semitism while this is going on, while these deaths are going on, it really is a disconnect. And it's really important for them to have a little bit of humanity when they're talking to just regular people. So anyway, thank you, Phoebe, for opening that door, because I had kind of forgotten about that experience until you mentioned yours.
Thank you, Diana. Gail, I see your hand.
Oh, yeah. I also wonder, and you may have covered this already, about the likelihood, if we did get a change of leadership in Washington, that would help, being that under the tenets of extreme Christian nationalism, there are large numbers of Christians who ought to be worried about the fate of Palestinian civilians, but who think that war and catastrophe move us closer to the rapture, which apparently I don't think the leadership probably really believes it literally, but large numbers of true believers really believe that things have to disintegrate in Israel, and I think they would like all the Israelis to be there when it happens, and then the rapture will come, and they will be saved. And there are people who actually think it's going to happen in their lifetime. This is not being talked about in the press at all, but it's been a movement that's been building for decades and is extremely strong in the United States.
I mean, people can do a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether or not they think that a change in leadership would make that.
I don't know if that would
help. For me, I would do a thumbs down.
Yeah, not going to help. Yeah.
Kind of hard to find it, but.
Hard to know these days.
Yeah, there's been so many, this is not new. I mean, the Gaza war is new, but this is not a new issue, I think. And there's been lots of presidents that have not been able to do this justice. So yeah, I think.
Obama tried. He tried pretty hard.
Yeah.
As did Jimmy Carter.
And Jimmy Carter as well.
Okay.
Yeah. But it takes all of us. I think it does.
Oh,
Next up is Mike. You got a question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, lower my hand. Yeah, well, again, this fellow Elon Pape actually addresses a bit of that in his books. I hate to tell people, go to this book, go to that book. But basically, he said Zionism actually began from the Christian community back in England, where they were basically looking as an excuse to try to get Jewish people out of England. And then there was a big immigration from Russia. This is the late 1800s. And they said, oh my God, we don't want these people. They're Jewish, but we really don't want them because we built good lives here in England. And people are going to say, oh, what are you bringing more of these Jewish people from? And they're the ones that actually started the idea of send them to this place where we don't know who the hell lives there in Palestine. Where is that on the map? But wherever it is, let's send them there and tell them, listen, your religion actually mentions Palestine. And believe it or not, they actually were before Theodore Herzl. And, who would ever think of this stuff? But Elon Pape, that's his job. He takes it very seriously. And he actually researched all of this stuff. And where did it begin? Whose idea was this? And it turns out it was the British Jewish people and Christians who, again, looked at their little Bible and dog-eared the page that was most pertinent to their wishes. And they were saying that, yeah, this is going to happen at the end of the world. All the Jewish people will have to rise up and realize what mistakes they've been making for a couple of thousand years and say, yeah, that's right. Jesus was a Jewish guy, but he had the right idea. We have to become Christians, and then we can go to heaven. And that was, so, I mean, he goes, I'm so glad. Thank God I'm an atheist. I mean, it just makes life so simple, So,
that's new to me. I didn't know that. I thought it was Herzl that brought it up, but something that Sam Hindle had mentioned too was that when Herzl did come around, they were considering Israel, right, Palestine, and also Argentina. So those two were kind of like the two hitters, the two options, and I think they settled on.
But to speak to the
Israel.
emotionality of it, it's so true. Some people feel extremely emotional, especially right now. You have these two demented people. That one guy shot those poor young people in Washington, and then this other maniac tried to burn people up in Colorado, and all they're doing is helping Netanyahu. It's basically, I mean, it's so sad because that's, again, my life is simple because I'm part of a peace group. You know, we're not, you know, the violence is not the answer to this stuff. All you're doing is giving ammunition to the Netanyahus of the world, saying, "Oh, look, they're crazy people. They want to burn people alive. Oh, look at this. They want to shoot a newlywed couple." I mean, of course, it's evil. The ICC, the ICJ, they indicted. Remember this now. They indicted Hamas as well as Netanyahu. Everybody tends to forget that. Now Biden said, "Oh no, that's okay. They indicted Hamas. Good idea, but no, they should not indict Netanyahu." I mean, poor Biden was, you know, gone somewhere, but I mean, of course they should have indicted Netanyahu. So it's just a sad, sad state of affairs that they are intimidated, I kind of think. But when you're dealing with people who are in a very emotional state, you're not going to get too far. So the best thing is to take the approach of Phoebe and Diana and just try to be a friend and try to say, listen, I mean, death is horrible. Murder is horrible. Nobody supports anything like that. And the ICJ and ICC are correct. They did the right thing. Of course, they were evil. You can't say that was okay. You can understand why they reacted in this counterproductive fashion, but you still got to put them in jail. I mean, you can't just allow that kind of thing. Right. But then the fact remains, there was so much outpouring, as it was in the beginning of October 7th, so much outpouring. In my own city council, I spoke to this, and I said, but then I hear that, but the answer is we're going to cut off all the food, water, medicine to all of those people. And wait a minute, what am I missing here? Your hostages are among those people. How are you supposed to say we're cutting it all off and we're going to start bombing and we want our people back? I say I'm sorry. You can have one or the other, but you know, right from the get-go, I was saying the organizations you want to join, the Jewish Force for Peace is an excellent group. J Street's excellent, and you know, so many other groups. Veterans for Peace, I'm a member of that, and they've actually bitten the bullet and said they have a sympathy fast going on now, which I'm not going to be part of that. I'm 81 years old. I don't know. Fast might be the last fast I ever see, but the fact remains, you know, it's not rocket science. You know, it's just treat people as equals. Like when they mourned the two people who were murdered in Washington, that same day, 85 Palestinians were murdered. And yet it was, if you just look at AP, Associated Press, total terminology difference. Young, lovely people going to get married, murdered. 85 people somehow bombed by someone, you know, mistaken or whatever. I mean, it was just like totally different terminology.
Look, the whole thing is horrible, but Susie, what are we going to do as a club?
Well, as a club, maybe nothing in particular, but I do, you know, Melanie gave us a couple ideas of the boycott, the divest. As a club, our position is probably best on the sanction side, writing letters to our members of Congress on the federal level, but I would also be writing to our state representatives too, because we want to make sure that the state of California is looking at this, and let's just take it as an equal view that harm is being done and we should be reducing harm. So
well,
that's
AB 715 is a place where you could go. That's a state assembly bill. You can have a look at that. I got kind of confused, but my understanding is just unnecessary. And there is a statement in there saying they're going to have a commissioner of anti-Semitism. Well, why would you want only anti-Semitism as a special commissioner for AB 715?
okay.
There should be, you know, the whole thing is unnecessary, and they're somehow elevating anti-Semitism above Islamophobia and anti other types of racism. So they're all
they all need
evil.
to be equally shunned, shall I say.
Percent,
Yeah.
exact. And that is why AB 715 is not a very good piece of legislation.
And I'll take that to our communications task force, and that would be a good place for us to be discussing it before our next general meeting. Elsa, last comment, and then we're going to move the meeting on. You're muted. There you go.
It was good that I was muted. Two questions, but one comment on the history of England, though, too. The Rothschilds were there for one, but it was a lot of Ashkenazi Jews, and they saw a lot of Sephardic Jews coming out of the woodwork, and they did not want their already established part of society having these other people come along who weren't quite of that social stature. And England is so hierarchical. And they helped define that. But it was the Rothschilds who really helped fund the early years of Israel to get beyond, which would have gone under, but to get beyond having so little water, having a dry desert of land. And they basically rescued them twice to get them going. That's history. Okay, two questions that I have. Why in hell did the Biden administration not only support Israel, but do it through all of the protests that were happening here? And tossing that to Gregory until I do my second question. You say AIPAC is losing steam, but I kept thinking AIPAC must be buying everybody. And we heard a lot about a lot of their money that went in. So that's the national level. Why in hell, with all of this uproar, did Biden so assiduously stick with that? And why wasn't it AIPAC? The second is about our own county, San Mateo County. When Diana and Ashley were bringing forth the resolution, there was a lot of concern from some of the leadership about, oh no, we don't want that coming out, because both our Senator Josh Becker and our Assembly person, Mark Berman, both are mine at least, are vociferously pro-Israeli and against anything that was Hamas. And Berman—
Well, Mark, not Josh. Just say Mark.
Well, okay, Mark hugely, but Josh had no. Josh, yeah, Mark was really obnoxious about the whole thing. Josh is head of the Jewish Bay Area group in the Senate, in the legislature for the state. So I just wonder if that group is behind this legislation, Mike. But I remember one social media comment that Josh did have, which was, the poor Israelis. And I put a comment in it, despite the fact how much I like him and I want him to keep talking to me, that said, and the poor Gazans. And there was no comment back, but he's still talking to me. And I just think they need to hear from more voices. But I want to go back to why did Biden stick with it through thick and thin, despite all of our protests? And why did this become a controversial issue that our chair of the Democratic Council was worried enough about? And as I dug down, one, because our legislators, meaning both of those guys, were so pro-Israeli. And she thought we shouldn't go against our elected people because we elected those people. And I was really taken aback at that. I wonder why, and what you think of the fact that our Democratic Council allowed a religiously based club to form, and that club is the Jewish Club. And I remember at the time being very worried, like our Constitution separates church and state. So it's also synagogue and state, it's religion and state. And I do not think that group should have been welcomed as a club, should have come in.
As a chartered club.
Chartered club, exactly.
Yeah.
3 questions. Why did Biden stick to his guns? Where'd they come from? too, why is this such a hard, why does our Democratic county group shy away from having this discussion even? And then three, yeah, why were they allowed to become a club? Lower hand. Anyone?
Yeah, happy to try and take a swing at it. Oh, Ashley, go right ahead, Ashley.
Yeah, I'm having trouble raising my hand.
Doesn't look like it.
Well, yeah, right. I think Karen was mostly against it because it looked like it was going to be controversial. And our central committee for years just shied away from issues completely. They saw their job as electing Democrats, and that was it. That was it. And I think partly because of us, they seem to emulate our club in a lot of ways. We serve refreshments at our meetings, so they started serving refreshments. We got all involved in issues, so they thought maybe they should get involved in issues, but they're just not as much into it as we are or weren't at the time. And Karen saw that she really just wanted to shy away from controversy. And there was a lot of controversy at that time. Meetings were getting disrupted. And, outsiders were just coming in and disrupting meetings. And so I think that was mostly her concern. We
But
did
she
have
finally
a lot of
accepted our
trouble.
position.
We did have a lot of trouble with Mark Berman. Josh was never a problem.
Right.
He just stayed on the outside of it and I think he tried to give the impression to us that he was probably on our side while giving Mark the impression that he was on his side.
That's a good politician for you.
Well, it's politics, right?
So
That's why they
Ashley,
call
it was a
That's
message.
why I call it politics.
There was
But
a line in our resolution that we took, not from Josh then, but from Kevin. Was that from Kevin? I was thinking it was from Josh. There was a really great point that he made in one of his statements, and we used that in our resolution, in our
that
peace
was
resolution.
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin. Okay, sorry. I thought it was
That
Josh.
was Kevin.
Well, my conversations with Josh were actually very positive, and my conversations with Mark were so not. So I just, so yeah.
Well,
And
thanks for
I
clarifying.
just want to ask, was anybody able to respond on why Biden has been so supportive?
No one knows, right? So one of my issues
I
was
was
that
going to
he
take
was
it.
trying to get it. He was trying to come in the back door to help with with aid and food and things, and so one of my ideas was that he was continuing to provide. Well, one, he was continuing to provide military support because the Jews, the Israelis, said that if they didn't, they would just come in with dirty bombs and just bomb the whole thing. They weren't going to be strategic about it. But I felt like Biden was trying to keep the door open in order for him to provide the humanitarian aid that was so desperately needed. And so it could be giving him too many marks. I don't know, but so many, as Melanie reported, so many of our humanitarian aid workers and journalists were killed more than any other conflict in the world in history. So.
Yeah.
I think that if Kamala had won, the Biden influence would have waned and we would be in a different situation.
I think so too. I agree.
Yeah, toward the beginning, well, not at the very beginning, but she actually made some strong statements
Yeah.
in favor. And then she got quieter because it turned out she was not speaking for Biden.
They let her do a trial balloon to see what would happen.
Yeah.
May be right on that. Yeah.
But she's married to a Jewish man who was out giving speeches, giving pro-Israeli speeches. So I found that interesting, that she really was more liberal, if I put it that way, than her boss. And yet her husband was also, so I'm still conflicted on that one.
And
Well, if I may, I can let me
but
just
we got to
squeeze.
wrap up because we're way
Okay.
over time.
All right.
But
Well,
last comment, Mike?
Yeah, just that. Why would they not have joined and supported the Israelis being beaten in the streets by Netanyahu's police for wanting a ceasefire?
Yes.
I mean, it seems like why not back those people? Why back the guy who's going to go to jail when there's peace, rather than the people who are saying, no, we need this ceasefire. We have an agreement. Let's live by it. All right, we let our guard down. We're made fools of. Those guys came running in with their pickup trucks and motorcycles and rifles and killed a bunch of people. It was absolutely horrible. But the fact remains, it's just a bunch of Yahoo guys. You know, they should not have been allowed to have done that, and they didn't listen to their own soldiers who were saying, something's going on. Stick with those people. Why not say enforce the agreement, keep the ceasefire, get your hostages back? They would have been back over a year ago. Many of them are dead now because they listened to Netanyahu rather than the people in the street being beaten up saying they want their loved ones back. To me, that's why I say Biden made no sense to me. Why not say Ehud Olmert is now saying basically that we should have been all along backing the people that wanted their loved ones back. So it's very, very sad.
Very sad.
All right. Marshall, if you have one last short comment.
Yes, very short. I think to me, the Biden position was based on our strategic analysis of the Middle East, and how Israel is a linchpin to keep everything under control there. Has nothing to do with morality and ethics.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a very, very true statement. It's very sad.
I could push that back.
And Melanie, I want to thank you. This has been a really great conversation tonight. And I'm kind of walking away going, oh, I feel like I can almost have a conversation about it now. And having heard some really good stories tonight, I really appreciate everybody's input. Okay.
Susie, I think, as you've done before, it would be interesting to come back to this every once in a while.
Yes, I agree.
The whole topic, but
and particularly because you brought up the peace resolution, and I hadn't, that had just dropped off my radar, and I'm wondering why. Maybe we need to bring these resolutions back in again.
And once they're passed, take them to our legislators. And have
take them to the newspapers and publicize if we can. So yeah, okay.
That's great for the communications task force, and we need to do that on all of our resolutions.
That's actually a really good idea. Okay, let's do that. Really quick, I want to go through